So tonight, as we recognize the accomplishments of our remarkable roster of honorees, we also celebrate the cause of freedom, something that has seldom faced such significant and such profound setbacks. Our next honoree, who I've had a chance to get to know tonight, because we've been seated together, and Shaukat Aziz has been there with us on the other side, one of our famous members of the International Advisory Board at the Atlantic Council. Nighat Dad, who represents a strand of the very vision that we're here to celebrate tonight. While the digital era represents a host of opportunities, it also brings about new tools for repression, as governments and others use surveillance and harassment to target those who work for freedom. This is particularly true in societies that are struggling with massive social change and with ensuring freedom of expression for all.
Nighat Dad, a Pakistani lawyer and internet activist who fights to protect freedom online, particularly for women, by standing up for free speech, against censorship, and against online harassment.
Nighat has sought to make it safe for women to be vocal on today's equivalent of the public square, the internet. She has promoted women's freedom of expression online and off, and fought against the prejudice that makes some believe that women have no role in our digital conversations. And we'll hear from her shortly.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. It's a real privilege for me to be here. But before I start, let me pay my respects to all the guests here, and particularly, we have two members of the US Congress here, Congresswoman Jan Schakowsky, Congressman Ted Poe, and of course, from the Senate, Senator Joe Manchin. Welcome to our event today, and it's a real privilege to have you here. Governor Huntsman, Chairman of the Atlantic Council, Fred Kemp, the President and CEO, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It's clearly a privilege for me to be here tonight to talk about our next awardee. Nighat Dad is an activist on digital freedom. She comes from my home country, Pakistan, but I must say I had never met her before. She's an activist, a reformer, a proactive person who has raised the voice of digital freedom in our country. She is a single mother and is responsible for taking care of a young son in addition to all her other responsibilities. She has institutionalized her efforts to fight for freedom and earn the freedom which is needed on the web by setting up her foundation, which is the Digital Rights Foundation. This foundation has brought together hundreds of people across the country, if not thousands. And wherever there is any impediment to open communication, expression of ideas, she stands up and defends and supports these people. She also is a keen activist on the women front. In Pakistan now, women's role and their status in society is ahead of men, but at least equal to men. We had a prime minister, the former prime minister, Benazir Bhutto, who became the chief executive of the country. And in every walks of life now, you will see women shoulder to shoulder with the men in terms of management responsibilities and, of course, other responsibilities. I say this because many of you have not visited our country, and the impressions people have may be a bit different. That's why I'm particularly pleased that today we are gathered to recognize a fighter, a person who's got a lot of conviction about what she does. Ladies and gentlemen, join me in congratulating and welcoming Nighat Dad.
Let me begin by conveying my warmest thanks and appreciation to the Atlantic Council for honoring me with the Freedom Award and for providing me with this wonderful opportunity to meet others that are working to promote freedom and personal liberty across the world, putting their lives at risk for a cause that is greater than ourselves. Over the past quarter century, we have borne witness to rising social tensions and economic uncertainty, global conflicts that cause millions of refugees to flee those same conflicts for a better life for their children. Religious extremists and the far right are on the rise, exploiting the fear and insecurity of many. Ours is an unstable world. Moved to defend ourselves from domestic and foreign terrorism, we must ensure these and the other principles of Universal Declaration and the rights to freedom of expression and privacy, amongst others, are respected. It is understandably difficult to maintain a balance in the wake of violent attacks worldwide. The rush to give broader powers of surveillance and detainment, the need to control avenues of information, is a reflexive reaction that we must fight. The reality is that we already live in a world where citizens are subject to their personal data being collected, where the website that they visit and the conversations that they have are monitored without their consent or their knowledge. In an attempt to catch potential terrorists, mass surveillance and invasion of privacy has not discouraged terrorism, and that we have seen across the world. Instead, there has directly or indirectly been a chilling effect on the democratic discourse and political actions that are vital to a healthy society worldwide. British Muslim children in Great Britain, for example, can now expect to be questioned by the police if they are critical of their own government's actions. Healthy criticism of the state, vital in a democracy society, can now result in citizens being monitored and questioned by their own national security agencies. Governments worldwide continue to discuss the possibility of banning certain websites or making access to them heavily restricted, ensuring that accessing such websites, whether out of curiosity or for approved academic research, can result in arrests. If the right to security overpowers the right to life and liberty, if our values are subject to overly broad scrutiny, intrusion, and lack of respect, then what is being defended? By criminalizing forms of expression, unintentionally or otherwise, we risk pushing people into the welcoming arms of extremists. Covering our eyes, ears, and mouths will not protect us from evil, but it will make it harder for people to be involved in the valuable discourse that is at the heart of social and financial progress. If we cannot hold the state apparatus accountable, we run the risk of penalizing millions of citizens simply for being curious or for connecting with their fellow global citizens. Freedom to information is a fundamental right, one that matters online just as much as it does offline. Denying and criminalizing one weakens the others, limits our liberties. We are living in a time of global unease, uncertainty, and conflict, but we are also living in a time of greater solidarity in the face of oppression and censorship. Security must not come at the cost of liberty, of democracy, of the rights of citizens. And we must work towards ensuring that security and civil rights can coexist. Civil liberties must not be casualties in the fight against extremism, for without them, democracy cannot prosper. Once again, thank you so much for this award and for inviting me to this wonderful event. Thank you so much.